Hello students, today I will start with new chapter neuroanatomy. Okay, that is our brain, very important organ of our body which controls each and every functions happening in our body. Now embryologically the brain tissue is derived from neuroectoderm. Okay, you know there are three germ layers: the endoderm, the mesoderm and the ectoderm. The ectoderm is the outer layer, mesoderm is the middle layer and endoderm is the innermost layer. So the brain tissue is developed from neuroectoderm, that is the neural tube, okay, of the ectoderm. So it is ectodermal in origin. Okay, now these are the brain vesicles. Okay, these are the brain vesicles. Which develops in the intrauterine life from the neuroectoderm. Okay, now what is developing in fourth week? In the fourth week of intrauterine life. Okay, these are brain vesicles. The upper is the prosencephalon, the middle is the mesencephalon and the lower is the rhombencephalon. This prosencephalon develops into forebrain, mesencephalon develops into midbrain and rhombencephalon develops into hindbrain. Clear? So prosencephalon is forebrain, mesencephalon is midbrain, rhombencephalon is hindbrain. Okay, now by fifth week, okay, the next week, that is week 5, this rhombencephalon is divided into metencephalon and myelencephalon. Okay, so by fifth week the rhombencephalon is divided into metencephalon and myelencephalon. Okay, myelencephalon becomes the metencephalon, it becomes the pons and cerebellum, and myelencephalon develops into medulla oblongata. Okay, so by fifth week the rhombencephalon, which is developing into hindbrain, is divided into metencephalon and myelencephalon. The metencephalon is developed into pons and cerebellum. Myelencephalon is developed into medulla oblongata. Okay, so now this is how your brain looks. Okay, this is the picture of a brain. Okay, these are the lobes which are present, which I'll talk. Okay, then there is presence of midbrain, forebrain and hindbrain. Okay, midbrain, forebrain and hindbrain. So please remember, prosencephalon, that is the prosencephalon, it develops into forebrain. Okay, the mesencephalon develops into midbrain and rhombencephalon it develops into the hindbrain. And this rhombencephalon is divided into metencephalon and myelencephalon. Metencephalon develops into pons and cerebellum of the hindbrain and myelencephalon develops into medulla oblongata. So this is also one of the picture where you can see. Okay, this is the, you can see here, this is the forebrain, prosencephalon, midbrain, mesencephalon, and this is the hindbrain. So this is the midbrain. Okay, and this is the forebrain. This much part is the forebrain. So you can see this much part is the forebrain. Then the midbrain. and this is the hindbrain. So it is consisting of the pons, the cerebellum and the medulla oblongata. Yes. So forebrain prosencephalon, midbrain mesencephalon and hindbrain is rhombencephalon, which divides into myelencephalon and metencephalon. Okay. Yes. So from the metencephalon develops the pons and cerebellum. So from the metencephalon develops the pons, this is the pons and the cerebellum. And from myelencephalon develops the medulla oblongata. So this is your medulla oblongata. So from metencephalon develops the pons and the cerebellum. And from myelencephalon develops the medulla oblongata. So this is the parts of the hindbrain. Clear? So mesencephalon divides into midbrain. Now prosencephalon. So we have talked about rhombencephalon. It divides into metencephalon and myelencephalon. Myelencephalon develops into medulla oblongata. Metencephalon develops into pons and cerebellum. Mesencephalon develops into midbrain. Okay. And prosencephalon, the forebrain. Okay. The prosencephalon is further divided into telencephalon and diencephalon. So telencephalon develops or divides into cerebrum and diencephalon divides into thalamus. Okay. So we saw this. Okay. Now if you see here, this is the forebrain developing from prosencephalon. Now this prosencephalon, this is the forebrain. This prosencephalon divides into telencephalon and diencephalon. So telencephalon develops into cerebral hemisphere or the cerebrum, and diencephalon, it includes the thalamus, epithalamus, okay, and hypothalamus. Okay. Mesencephalon develops into midbrain, and the last part, that is the rhombencephalon, is divided into metencephalon and myencephalon. The myelencephalon, it develops into medulla oblongata. Okay. And the metencephalon develops into pons and the cerebellum. So this is the basic division of the brain. This has to be remembered. Okay. So this is very, very important. The forebrain, the midbrain and the hindbrain. Okay. So forebrain is developing from prosencephalon, midbrain from mesencephalon, hindbrain from rhombencephalon, midbrain, okay, from mesencephalon. Forebrain, it further divides into telencephalon. Okay, it further divides into telencephalon and diencephalon. This telencephalon divides into cerebral hemisphere, and diencephalon, it includes thalamus, hypothalamus, epithalamus. Mesencephalon develops into midbrain, and rhombencephalon, it is divided into myelencephalon and metencephalon. The myelencephalon, okay, it develops into medulla oblongata, and metencephalon develops into pons and cerebellum. So this was the basic introduction. Now, cerebrum consists of two hemispheres. Okay, the cerebrum, which is the telencephalon, it consists of two hemispheres. Okay, so there are two cerebral hemispheres. Okay. If you cut the cerebrum in the middle and look inside, it has many structures. So this is the cerebral hemispheres. Okay, this is your brain. So this is the cerebral hemispheres. So if you cut the brain, that is the cerebrum, telencephalon, into half, one half, other half. So it is right cerebral hemisphere, left cerebral hemispheres. So there are two cerebral hemispheres, right and left. And this is cut by, if you see here, there is a long fissure. This is cut by a fissure which is known as the longitudinal fissure. So cerebrum is divided into right and left by a fissure, by a cut, and that is known as the longitudinal fissure. Okay, this is known as the longitudinal fissure. So we'll talk in detail about each, that is prosencephalon, mesencephalon, rhombencephalon. Okay, now the brain, it is also known as, the brain is also known as encephalon. Okay, the brain is also known as encephalon. In normal adults, the weight of the brain is 1200 to 1400 grams. Okay, so the weight of the brain is 1200 to 1400 grams, and the location of the brain is in the cranial cavity or brain box. Okay, that is the skull. The brain is completely protected in the skull. The brain is made up of 100 billions of neurons. Okay, that is the nerve cells. So brain is also known as encephalon. In normal adults, the weight of the brain is 1200 to 1400 grams. It is located in the cranial cavity or brain box or the skull, and it is made up of 100 billions of neurons. Now these parts of the brain I described right now only. Prosencephalon is forebrain, mesencephalon is midbrain, and rhombencephalon is hindbrain. Clear? Now we'll see. Now this prosencephalon, that is forebrain, it is made up of three parts. So in previously I described cerebrum or cerebral hemispheres and diencephalon. And the third part of prosencephalon is the pair of olfactory lobes. Okay, so prosencephalon, it is made up of three parts. First is pair of olfactory lobes. Olfactory means it is related to sense of smell. Cerebrum or cerebral hemisphere, that is derived from telencephalon, and the third part of prosencephalon is the diencephalon, which consists of thalamus, hypothalamus, epithalamus. Okay, so that is, please remember this, pair of olfactory lobes, cerebrum or cerebral hemispheres, telencephalon, and diencephalon, that is thalamus and epithalamus. Okay, the next is the mesencephalon. Now what does the mesencephalon consist of? That is the midbrain. It consists of optic lobes and cerebral peduncles. Okay, so it consists of optic lobes. Optic means related to eyes. So mesencephalon, midbrain, consists of optic lobes and cerebral peduncles. The last is rhombencephalon, that is the hindbrain. I just talked here. It is divided into myelencephalon, okay, and metencephalon. Okay, it is divided into myelencephalon and metencephalon, and you get the parts cerebellum, pons, and medulla oblongata. Okay, so the prosencephalon, it is made up of three parts, that is pair of olfactory lobes, cerebrum or cerebral hemisphere from telencephalon, and diencephalon, that is thalamus, hypothalamus, and epithalamus. Mesencephalon consists of optic lobes and cerebral peduncles. Rhombencephalon is myelencephalon and metencephalon, and that is deriving cerebellum, pons varioli and medulla oblongata. Okay. Now we'll talk one by one. First we'll talk about the prosencephalon part, forebrain, and this consists of pair of olfactory lobes. Now this prosencephalon, that is, it has olfactory lobes. So it's a part of forebrain which consists of olfactory lobes. They are small structure on inferior surface completely covered by large part of the cerebral hemispheres. So this prosencephalon, the olfactory lobes, okay, so there are olfactory lobes. Now this olfactory lobes, the diagram is this way. This is the olfactory tract, okay, and there is olfactory bulb, okay. So if you look inferiorly on the inferior surface of the brain, okay, so this is the inferior part of the brain, okay. You can see here, this is the olfactory bulb and this is the olfactory tract, and these are pair of olfactory lobes, okay. This is present on the inferior surface of the forebrain, okay, the inferior surface of the forebrain, lower surface, the inferior surface of the forebrain, okay. So if you take a brain, you take cerebrum, if you just tilt it, okay, you tilt it completely, so you will able to see the inferior surface, okay. If you make it upside down, so that is the inferior surface. So inferior surface consists of olfactory lobes. This is the pair of olfactory lobes. This is a part of forebrain, okay. This is a pair of olfactory lobes. Now this consists of anterior swollen part. If you see, this is the pair of olfactory lobes. It consists of anterior swollen part which is known as olfactory bulb. This is known as olfactory bulb, okay, and the narrow posterior part. This is the narrow posterior part which consists of olfactory tract, okay. So the forebrain, that is prosencephalon, it has olfactory lobes which is present on the inferior surface. So it is completely covered by the cerebral hemispheres. If this is the brain tissue, okay, this is the brain tissue. If you are seeing it from above, okay, you are seeing it from above. If we completely make it upside down, so we will see the inferior surface. So this is the dorsal view and this is the inferior surface, okay, down. So this is the cerebral hemisphere, and if you completely turn, this is the inferior surface, and here you will be able to see the olfactory lobes. So it consists of anterior swollen part, that is the olfactory bulb, and the posterior narrow part, that is the olfactory tract, okay. Now this together forms the olfactory lobe. They are solid small structures and they are connected to olfactory region of the temporal lobe via the olfactory tract. So they are connected with the temporal lobe, okay. So they are connected with the temporal lobe, okay. So if you see this, they are connected with the temporal lobe, olfaction, okay. So that is presence behind, so it is connected to the temporal lobe, okay. So this, it is required for olfaction. As you all know, this together forms the olfactory lobe, and they are solid small structures which are connected to the temporal lobe via the olfactory tract, okay. And the function is the detection of the smell. Okay. So in this video I talked about the parts of the brain, that is prosencephalon, the mesencephalon and the rhombencephalon. Okay. The prosencephalon is forebrain, the mesencephalon is midbrain, and rhombencephalon is the hindbrain. Prosencephalon consists of olfactory lobes, cerebrum or cerebral hemispheres, that is telencephalon, and diencephalon, which consists of thalamus, epithalamus and hypothalamus. The olfactory lobes is present on the inferior surface of the brain. So it is completely covered by the cerebral hemispheres. It has anterior swollen part which is known as the olfactory bulb. Okay, it has an anterior swollen part which is known as olfactory bulb. Okay, this is the olfactory bulb. And it has posterior narrow part which is the olfactory tract, and it is connected to the temporal lobe. Okay, below. So the function is detection of smell. Clear? The next is mesencephalon, which is midbrain. It consists of optic lobes and cerebral peduncles, and rhombencephalon, that is the hindbrain. So it consists of metencephalon and myelencephalon. The metencephalon divides into pons and cerebellum, and myelencephalon is deriving, that is medulla oblongata. So from metencephalon, pons and cerebellum is derived, and from myelencephalon, medulla oblongata. Clear? Okay. So this was the introduction of the brain. Okay. This is the forebrain, the midbrain and the hindbrain. Hindbrain consists of pons, the cerebellum and the medulla oblongata. This is the midbrain. This is the forebrain. Okay. In my next video, I will talk in detail about the cerebrum. Thank you, students.